The storm screamed like a living thing. Snow whirled across the barren valley of the alien world Vulna, coating everything in white silence and death. The wind clawed at Elias's helmet, and the warning lights inside his visor flashed a cold red. Oxygen low, body temperature dropping fast. He had been walking for hours, maybe longer. He had stopped counting after his ship went down. All he knew now was the bitter cold, the ache in his legs, and the fear that he would die on a world no one from Earth had ever heard of. Elias had not come to Vulna by choice. His mission was simple, a supply run to an outer mining station, a short jump through the system, drop the cargo and return home to the orbital station. But fate had other plans. The shuttle had hit a storm mid-flight, an energy surge that tore through the engines and sent him spinning down into the planet's frozen wasteland. The ship had broken apart. His crew, gone. He hadn't seen another soul since the crash. Only snow, only silence, only himself. He trudged on, the storm biting deeper into his suit's damaged seals. His hands were numb, his breath fogging the inside of his helmet. He didn't think about rescue anymore. No one knew where he was. He didn't even know where he was. Each step felt heavier than the last, his boots sinking into the ice. When the first warning of life support failure blinked across his visor, he laughed bitterly to himself. Figures, he muttered. Die on a rock nobody cares about, perfect. But then, through the swirling snow, he saw something, a faint orange light, small and flickering. For a second he thought it was a hallucination, another trick of the storm. Yet when he blinked, it was still there. A glow. A promise. Shelter. Hope. With what little strength remained, he pushed toward it, his vision blurring, his body stumbling. He fell twice, once hard enough that the impact made his suit alarm scream. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. The light was all he had left. Finally, his boot struck something solid. Rock. He followed the faint trail up a slope, the light growing stronger until it broke through the blizzard. It was a small fire, sheltered inside the mouth of a cave. Smoke rose into the cold night air. The warmth reached him like a whisper from another world. Elias stumbled forward, barely managing to drag himself inside. His helmet fogged completely, his breath ragged. Then he saw her. At first he thought she was an animal. She sat curled near the fire, her fur gleaming orange-red in the firelight. Long, elegant ears twitched at the sound of his entrance, and a thick tail moved lazily behind her. But when she turned, he saw her face and froze. She wasn't an animal. She was someone. Her eyes were bright gold, intelligent and sharp. And her face was soft, almost human, but framed with short fur. For a heartbeat, both of them just stared at each other, the lost human and the fox-like alien girl. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "Human," she said. "You should not be here." Elias tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I crashed. "Please," he gasped, falling to his knees. "I just need shelter, just..." Warmth. She didn't move. Her golden eyes studied him carefully, wary and uncertain. "You bring danger," she said. "Your kind always does." Elias shook his head weakly. "I'm not like them. I don't even know where I am." His breath came out in visible clouds. "Please, I'll die out there." For a long moment she said nothing. Then with a quiet sigh, she stood and stepped closer. Her fur shimmered in the firelight, and when she reached for him, her hands were small but strong. "Very well," she said. "You may stay. For now." She helped him remove the damaged helmet and guided him closer to the fire. The warmth hit him like a wave, thawing his frozen fingers and numbed heart. He looked around the cave. It was small but carefully built. Animal hides covered the ground. Tools hung from the walls. The smell of herbs and smoke filled the air. Elias looked up at her again, still unsure if he was dreaming. "Thank you," he whispered. The Vulpine girl looked at him, her golden eyes softening just slightly. "My name is Sira," she said. "Rest, human. The storm will not end soon." And as the wind howled outside, Elias lay near the fire, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. For the first time since the crash, he felt safe. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know who she really was, or why she had helped him despite her fear. But as the warmth of the fire spread through his tired body, one thing became clear. He had found something more than shelter that night. He had found a spark of life in a frozen, dying world, and that spark had golden eyes. When Elias opened his eyes, the storm had quieted. The fire burned low, glowing softly against the cave walls. His body ached, but the warmth brought life back to his limbs. The alien girl, Sira, sat near the entrance. Her tail curled neatly around her legs, her golden eyes watching the snow outside. For a long moment he simply looked at her, wondering if she was real or another dream born from exhaustion. She turned when she felt his gaze. "You live," she said plainly. "Good," Elias gave a weak laugh. "Barely." He sat up, his blanket slipping down to reveal the frayed edge of his flight suit. "Thank you for saving me." Sira tilted her head slightly. "I did not save you," she said. "I only kept you from dying." Her tone was calm, but there was something beneath it. A quiet kindness, like she didn't want him to see how much she cared. Elias smiled anyway. "Where I come from, that still counts." Sira didn't answer. She stood and walked to a pot hanging above the fire. Steam rose from it, carrying a rich, earthy smell. She filled a wooden bowl and handed it to him. "Eat," she said. "Your body is weak." He took the bowl carefully. The soup was thick, full of soft, glowing roots and small pieces of white meat. He hesitated for a moment, then took a sip. It was warm, slightly sweet, and tasted better than anything he had eaten in weeks. His eyes closed as the heat spread through him. "This is amazing," he murmured. Sira sat down beside the fire again, her expression unreadable. "It is snow hare and sunroot. Simple food." Elias looked around the cave as he ate. It was small but full of life. Stone shelves stacked with jars, bundles of herbs hanging to dry, and furs neatly arranged into a sleeping corner. This wasn't just a shelter. It was a home. And she lived here alone, surrounded by silence and snow. "Do you live here by yourself?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "The nearest village is far beyond the ridge." "Why?" he asked softly. "Why live so far from your people?" Sira's ears twitched slightly, and for the first time she hesitated. "Because sometimes your own kind can hurt you more than strangers," she said at last. Her eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. "And I was tired of fighting them." Elias felt a heaviness in his chest. He didn't ask more. He knew that pain, the kind that made you walk away from everything just to breathe. So he simply nodded. "Then maybe we're both running from something," he said quietly. Her eyes flickered toward him. "Maybe." The storm outside howled again, a reminder of the world's cruel coldness. Inside, the fire crackled gently, wrapping them in a fragile peace. Hours passed as they shared quiet words. Elias told her about Earth, the blue oceans, the golden cities, the wind that carried warmth instead of frost. She listened with wide eyes, as if trying to imagine a world where the sun could kiss your skin without burning it. "Your world sounds alive," she whispered. "Ours is cold and old. Even the stars here seem tired." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why you needed fire, to keep the stars from sleeping." Sira blinked at his words, then laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. "Humans speak strangely." "You turn sorrow into poetry," he shrugged. "It's how we survive." That night, Sira offered him a fur blanket near the fire. "You may stay until the storm passes," she said. "But when it ends, you must go. My people will not welcome you." Elias nodded slowly. He didn't blame her. He knew what fear of the unknown could do to people. "I understand," he said, "but thank you again." As she lay down on the other side of the fire, Sira's voice drifted through the silence. "You are different, human. The others who came before, they brought fire that burned. You bring warmth that heals. I do not know which is more dangerous." Elias closed his eyes, her words echoing in his mind. He didn't know what to say. He only knew that her presence had already begun to thaw something inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Outside, the wind began to fade. The first light of dawn crept through the mouth of the cave, turning the snow into silver glass. For a moment, everything was still. The storm, the fear, the loneliness. Elias looked at Sira as she slept, her ears twitching softly, her tail curled protectively around her. She looked peaceful, almost innocent. He realized then that he didn't just owe her his life. He felt connected to her in some quiet, unexplainable way. Two souls from different worlds, both lost, both searching for warmth. And as he drifted back to sleep beside the fading fire, one thought filled his heart. Maybe in this frozen world, the shelter he had found was not just from the storm outside, but from the storm within him too. The morning came quiet, but the air felt heavy. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world buried under white silence. Elias stood outside the cave, breathing in the cold air. The sky above was a pale gray and the mountains looked endless. For a moment he almost felt peace. He had survived. He was alive. Inside, Sira was preparing something from dried herbs and melted snow. The scent drifted softly through the air. "You should not stand out there too long," she said without looking up. "The cold will steal your strength again." Elias smiled faintly and stepped back inside. "I was just thinking, maybe I can find parts of my ship. Maybe there's still a way to send a signal." Her ears twitched slightly. "A signal?" she repeated. "If your people find you, will they leave my world alone?" Elias looked down. He didn't know how to answer. Humanity's history was not gentle. They called it exploration, but many times it meant something else, claiming, taking, changing. "I can't promise that," he said finally, "but I promise I wouldn't let them hurt you." Sira looked at him for a long moment. "Words," she said softly. "They are light things, easy to carry and easy to break." Elias wanted to reply, but before he could, she suddenly froze. Her ears turned toward the cave entrance, her golden eyes narrowing. "Stay quiet," she whispered. A moment later, voices echoed faintly from outside, rough guttural sounds carried by the wind. Sira's face went pale. She grabbed her spear from the wall and motioned for Elias to move behind the fire. "Who is it?" he whispered. "Hunters," she said, her voice sharp. "From the Ridge Village." "My village?" Elias felt his stomach twist. "They're looking for you?" Her jaw tightened. "No, they're looking for you." Before he could respond, the shadows of 4 figures appeared at the cave's mouth. They stepped inside, their fur cloaks dusted with snow, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Each carried a weapon carved from bone and plasma metal. One of them, tall and scarred, stepped forward. "Sira of the Ridge," he growled. "You were warned not to stray near the dead valleys. And now we see why." His gaze fell on Elias. "You harbor a Terran, a human." Sira stood tall, though Elias could see the tension in her body. "He crashed," she said. "He was dying. I only gave him shelter." The leader bared his sharp teeth. "Shelter for a human is betrayal for us. Have you forgotten what their kind did to our kin? The fires? The broken forests?" Elias raised his hand slowly. "I'm not like them. Please, listen. I didn't come here to hurt anyone, but the hunters didn't care." One stepped forward, his weapon raised. "Kill him before his sickness spreads. Before his kind returns." "Wait!" Sira shouted, stepping between them. "You will not touch him." The leader's eyes darkened. "Move, Sira." She didn't. Her tail flicked sharply behind her, her stance firm. "He is under my protection." For a moment, no one spoke. The fire crackled, and the cold air trembled with tension. Then the hunter lunged. Elias barely saw the motion before the spear thrust toward him. But Sira moved first. The blade struck her arm, cutting deep, blood splattering across the stone floor. She didn't cry out. She simply pushed the weapon aside and swung her own spear, forcing the attacker back. "Enough!" she hissed. "If you harm him, you will answer to me." The leader's voice dropped to a low snarl. "You shame your bloodline, Sira. You stand for a human over your own people." Her breathing was heavy now, her wound dripping red on the snow. But her eyes burned like fire. "He is not my enemy." "You are if you kill the innocent." For a long, tense moment, the hunter said nothing. Then the leader lowered his spear. "The elders will hear of this," he said coldly. "You are no longer one of us." And with that, they turned and vanished into the white mist, their silhouettes swallowed by the snow. The cave fell silent again. Sira swayed slightly before Elias caught her arm. "You're hurt," he said, voice trembling. "It is nothing," she whispered, though her blood stained the floor. "They will tell the others. We must leave soon." Elias helped her sit near the fire, wrapping a bandage around her wound. His heart pounded with guilt and anger. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You risked everything because of me." Sira looked at him, pain and sadness in her eyes, but also something deeper, something steady. "Do not be sorry," she said. "I made my choice." Outside, the wind began to rise again, carrying the echo of distant howls. Inside the cave, 2 hearts beat in the quiet light of the fire. No longer strangers, but allies against a world that had turned its back on them. That night, neither of them slept. The warmth of the fire felt fragile now, like a candle flickering against the dark. But even as fear pressed around them, one truth burned stronger than the storm. She had chosen to protect him. And that choice had changed everything. Night fell heavy and silent after the hunters left. The fire inside the cave burned low, its light trembling on the walls like a frightened heartbeat. Elias sat beside Sira, his hands shaking as he tried to tighten the bandage on her wounded arm. The cut was deep, and though she tried to hide her pain, he could see it in the way her jaw clenched and her ears drooped. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "You could have died trying to protect me." Sira looked up, her golden eyes soft but steady. "If I hadn't, you would have died instead?" "That's not a reason," Elias said, his voice breaking. "You lost your home. Your people will hunt you now, all because of me." She gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe I was already lost before you came." Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. "Maybe helping you gave me something worth standing for again." Elias stared at her, unsure what to say. The fire crackled softly between them, filling the silence that words couldn't. He wanted to argue, to tell her that her life was too precious to throw away for him, but deep inside a warmth bloomed in his chest. She had chosen him, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. He finished wrapping her arm and sat back against the stone wall. The cold seeped in through his worn suit, but the fire's glow made it bearable. Sira shifted, pulling a fur blanket around her shoulders. "You should rest," she said gently. "Tomorrow we must leave. The ridge hunters will not stop. Once they tell the elders, they'll send more." "Leave?" Elias asked. "Where would we even go?" Her tail moved slowly behind her. "Beyond the mountains there are old ruins. My grandmother told me stories about them, places where the old ones lived before the war. No one dares to go there now. Maybe that's where we'll be safe." Elias nodded slowly. He didn't like the idea of wandering into unknown ruins on a frozen planet, but staying meant death, for both of them. "Then we leave at dawn," he said. Sira gave a faint nod, then turned her gaze to the flames. For a long while neither spoke. The sound of the wind outside grew softer, and the world seemed to breathe again after all the violence. Elias looked at her, really looked. The firelight danced across her fur, giving her a glow that felt alive, almost human. "Back on Earth," he said quietly. "We have a saying, fire brings people together. Maybe it means something similar here." Sira tilted her head. "On my world, we say fire shows what hides in the heart. It burns away lies." She glanced at him, her golden eyes curious. "So tell me, human, what burns in your heart?" The question caught him off guard. He thought for a moment, staring into the flames. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe fear. Maybe guilt. I've lost people before, and now I'm just tired of watching good things disappear." Sira nodded slowly. "Then maybe your fire is sorrow. Mine was anger for a long time. But lately," she paused, her tail curling around her legs. "Lately I feel something different. Something I don't have words for." Their eyes met across the fire, and in that brief moment Elias understood. He didn't need her to explain. He could feel it too. The quiet bond that had formed between them, fragile yet unbreakable. "Maybe that's hope," he said softly. She smiled, just a small curve of her lips. "Hope," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were something rare. "Yes, maybe it is." The fire flickered brighter as though hearing their words. Outside, the wind whispered through the valley like a sigh. Elias leaned back, exhaustion tugging at him. "You should sleep," he said. "I will when you do," Sira replied. He laughed quietly. "You sound like someone's older sister." Her ears twitched. "I sound like someone who doesn't want to watch another person freeze to death." Elias smiled faintly and closed his eyes. "You've already done more for me than anyone could." When he drifted to sleep, Sira stayed awake a little longer, staring at the human resting beside her. His breathing was slow, peaceful. She reached out, brushing a loose strand of his hair back with gentle fingers. His skin was warm, soft compared to her own. She didn't understand why her chest ached when she looked at him. He was strange, fragile, and full of guilt. But there was something in him that pulled her closer, something that made her feel less alone. Sira looked toward the fire again, her reflection dancing in the flames. "Maybe," she whispered to herself, "this is what the old stories meant when they said two worlds can share one warmth." Outside, the first stars appeared, shimmering faintly above the frozen mountains. The storm had passed, but a different kind of storm had begun, one that burned quietly in their hearts, lighting the coldest corners of their souls. The morning after was bitter and gray. The storm had finally cleared, but the air still carried a cruel chill. The mountains stood tall and endless, wrapped in white mist. Elias and Sira packed what little they had, dried food, fur blankets, a few tools, and stepped out of the cave that had once been their home. The fire's ashes lay cold behind them, a silent reminder of what they were leaving behind. Elias looked back one last time. "You sure we have to go?" he asked quietly. Sira adjusted the strap of her small satchel and nodded. "Yes, they will come again, and next time they will not just threaten." Her voice was calm, but her eyes carried a shadow of pain. "This place is no longer safe." Elias sighed, pulling his worn gloves tighter. "Then we walk," he said. They began their journey through the snow, the sound of their boots and paws crunching softly beneath them. The wind was gentle now, carrying whispers instead of screams. For a while, neither spoke. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy, full of thoughts neither dared to say aloud. After some time, Elias broke the quiet. "You said there were ruins beyond the mountains. What are they?" Sira's ears flicked slightly. "Old places," she said. "Before my kind learned to fight each other. Before we feared outsiders. My grandmother told me the old ones built cities that touched the clouds. Now they are broken. But sometimes the ruins still give shelter." Elias smiled faintly. "Sounds like Earth," he said. "We build, we destroy, then we build again." Sira looked at him curiously. "Your kind always builds. My kind always hides. Maybe that is why we fear you." He glanced at her. "Maybe that's why we need each other." She didn't reply, but the corner of her mouth lifted in a small, soft smile. As they walked, the sky began to change. Pale light broke through the clouds, spreading a warm glow over the icy hills. It was the first sunlight Elias had seen since the crash, and it made the snow sparkle like diamonds. He stopped for a moment, looking up in wonder. Sira turned to him. "Does it remind you of your world?" she asked. "A little," he said. "But my sun was yellow, not white. And the air was warm. I used to take it for granted how it felt on my skin. Now, I'd give anything to feel it again." Sira studied him silently. "Maybe you will," she said softly. "If your people find you." He shook his head slowly. "If they come, they'll bring ships, weapons, scanners. They'll see this world as a resource, not a home." He looked at her, his eyes serious. "If they come, promise me you'll hide." Sira frowned. "You fear your own kind?" "I fear what they've become," he said simply. Her gaze softened. She didn't argue. She understood more than he realized. By the time the sun began to fade, they had reached a ridge overlooking a vast frozen valley. Below them, dark shapes dotted the snow, massive ruins half buried in ice. Stone towers leaned against each other like broken teeth. It looked ancient, lifeless, and yet strangely beautiful. "There," Sira said quietly. "The city of the old ones." Elias stared at the sight, awestruck. "It's incredible." They descended carefully, their breaths visible in the cold air. The ruins were silent, but Elias felt something in them. An echo of history, a story lost in time. They found a small chamber under a fallen arch and decided to rest there. As night fell, they lit a small fire using broken wood and old fabric. The orange light danced on the stone walls, making the shadows seem alive. Sira sat near the flames, wrapping her tail around her legs. "When I was small," she said quietly, "my mother told me the ruins were cursed, that those who stayed too long would hear the voices of the dead." Elias chuckled softly. "Let's hope they're friendly voices, then." She smiled, her golden eyes glowing warmly in the firelight. "You joke too much, human." "Only when I'm scared," he admitted. There was silence for a moment. Then Sira said, "You are strange, Elias. You lost your people, your world, yet you still smile. Why?" He looked into the fire, his face thoughtful. "Because if I stop smiling, I'll forget who I am. Smiling reminds me that there's still something good left, some hope worth keeping." Sira watched him closely. Something in his words touched her deeply. She had lived so long believing survival meant silence and strength. But this human, fragile and warm-hearted, carried hope like it was part of his blood. "Maybe that is why the stars brought you here," she whispered. Elias looked up. "What do you mean?" She met his eyes. "Maybe you were not meant to find shelter. Maybe you were meant to bring light to this cold place." For a moment, he didn't know what to say. The words stayed in his heart, glowing quietly like embers. Outside, the wind began to rise again, but it no longer sounded cruel. It sang softly through the ruins, an old forgotten song that carried through the night. And inside that broken city, two exiles sat by the fire, side by side. Not enemies, not strangers, just two lost souls walking the same road, finding warmth in a world that had long forgotten it. The next few days passed quietly in the frozen ruins. The air was cold but calm, and for a short while it almost felt like peace. Elias and Sira rebuilt part of the old chamber, stacking stones to block the wind. They made a small home out of broken walls and ancient metal. It wasn't much, but to them it was safety. Each morning, Sira would venture out to hunt. Her fur cloak shimmered like silver in the pale light, and she moved through the snow like a whisper. Elias would stay behind, tending the fire, melting snow into water, fixing tools and keeping watch for danger. They had become a quiet rhythm, two lives moving together as if they had always belonged that way. One night, as they shared a meal of roasted roots and dried meat, Elias noticed Sira staring at the fire with a troubled look. "You're quiet," he said softly. Her tail flicked slightly. "I heard something in the wind today," she said. "Voices, not from spirits. From the mountains." Elias frowned. "Voices?" She nodded. "Hunters. From my clan," he froze. "They found us?" "Not yet," she replied. "But they will. They are searching the valleys." Elias sighed deeply. "We can't keep running forever." Sira's eyes lifted to meet his. "Then what will you do when they come?" He looked at her with tired honesty. "I'll protect you. Whatever it takes." Her ears lowered slightly. "You shouldn't. They are my people." "You are not," Elias smiled sadly. "You chose me once. That made me your people too." She didn't answer, but her eyes shimmered with emotion. The fire's reflection danced in her golden pupils like two tiny suns fighting against the dark. That night, as they slept side by side, the storm returned. This time it came without warning. The wind howled like a wounded beast, shaking the ruins around them. Snow poured through the cracks in the stone. Elias woke first, grabbing their supplies before the fire went out. "Sira, wake up," he shouted over the wind. She sprang to her feet, her instincts sharp. "The roof is breaking," she cried. The old ceiling above them cracked and groaned. Stones began to fall. They ran through the narrow passage as the chamber collapsed behind them, their hearts pounding in their chests. When they finally reached the open air, the night sky was gone, swallowed by a white storm so fierce it blurred the world. They couldn't see 10 steps ahead. "Over there," Sira shouted, pointing toward a shadowed ridge. Together they fought against the wind, their clothes whipping violently, their faces stung by ice. Elias's hands were numb, his body trembling. His vision blurred from exhaustion, but he kept moving because Sira was beside him and she never stopped. They reached a small hollow in the rocks and fell to the ground, gasping. Snow piled at the entrance, but it was shelter, at least for now. Elias leaned back against the wall, his chest burning with every breath. "You okay?" he managed to say. Sira nodded, though her fur was soaked and her ears trembled. She pressed close to him, trying to share warmth. "The storm will last until morning," she whispered. "We must stay close." He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her near. Her body was cold at first, but slowly warmth began to return. The sound of the wind outside was terrible, but between them there was a quiet peace. After a long silence, Elias spoke again. "Do you ever regret saving me?" Sira looked up at him, surprised. "Why do you ask that?" He smiled faintly. "Because every time I think we're safe, something comes after us. I don't want your life to be danger because of me." Sira shook her head firmly. "You do not understand, Elias. Before you came, I had no life at all. Only duty, fear, and silence. You brought something back to me, hope." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were strong. "Even if the world ends tomorrow, I will not regret choosing you." Elias's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but words failed him. He just nodded, his hand resting on hers, feeling her heartbeat beneath her fur. Outside, thunder rolled across the frozen sky. The mountains shivered beneath the storm's weight. Hours passed like shadows. The storm roared, then slowly began to die down. When dawn finally came, light seeped through the cracks of snow that covered their shelter. Sira stirred first, her golden eyes opening to the pale morning. Elias was still half asleep, his head resting against her shoulder. For a moment, she just watched him. The human who had fallen from the stars, who smiled even when the world tried to break him. He was fragile, yes, but he was also strong in ways she could not understand. The world was silent after the storm. The air hung heavy with cold mist, and the snow stretched endlessly around them. Elias and Sira walked side by side through the white stillness, their footprints the only mark of life left in that frozen land. They had survived the night, but survival was not victory. It was only another chance to face what waited ahead. By midday, they reached the edge of the ruins where the mountains opened into a vast frozen plain. From there, they could see movement in the distance, dark shapes crossing the snow. Not beasts this time, people. Sira stopped suddenly, her breath catching. "My clan," she whispered. Her tail lowered, her ears twitching nervously. Elias squinted, his hand instinctively going to the metal rod he carried as a weapon. "They found us," he said quietly. Sira looked at him, fear and pain mixed in her eyes. "You must go, Elias. They came for me, not you. If they see us together, they will call you a thief, a trespasser." He shook his head firmly. "I won't leave you." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. They will kill you." "You are human. They think your kind brings only ruin." Elias met her gaze, his blue eyes steady. "Then let them see something different." Sira's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, but her heart knew it was useless. He was stubborn, braver than he should be. The same courage that once made her afraid of him now made her love him even more. The wind grew stronger as the figures approached. Soon the hunters came into view, 6 fox-like warriors wrapped in dark fur armor, their eyes glowing amber beneath their hoods. The leader, a tall vixen with silver streaks across her muzzle, stepped forward. "Sira of the Broken Fang," the leader called. "You were told to return alone, yet you walk with the enemy." Sira straightened, her tail lashing once. "He is no enemy, Mother," she said firmly. Elias froze. "Mother?" The silver vixen's gaze turned cold. "You bring shame to our bloodline," she said. "You hide with a creature that destroyed worlds." "He destroyed nothing," Sira replied. "He saved me." "He saved your daughter when you would have let her die." The others murmured in shock. The leader's expression darkened. "Enough. Step aside, Sira. We will deal with the human." Elias took a step forward, his hands open, voice calm. "I don't want to fight," he said. "All I wanted was shelter. She gave it to me. I never meant to harm anyone." The silver vixen's eyes narrowed. "Words mean nothing when your kind brings fire from the skies." Sira moved between them. "If you touch him, you must go through me." The warriors hesitated. The leader's tail flicked sharply. "You would betray your kin for this outsider?" Sira's voice broke, but she stood tall. "I am not betraying anyone. I am choosing my truth." She looked at Elias. "And my truth is him." The leader raised her weapon, anger flashing in her eyes. "Then you are no daughter of mine." Before anyone could move, Elias stepped forward, placing himself between them. "Stop," he said quietly. "She's right. I don't belong here. If you need to take someone, take me." Sira's eyes widened in horror. "Elias, no." He turned to her, his expression soft and full of warmth. "You gave me a home when I had nothing. If this is what it costs to keep you safe, then it's worth it." Tears welled in Sira's golden eyes. "I won't let you die for me." Elias smiled faintly. "Then live for me." The warriors shifted uneasily. The air between them felt heavy, full of something sacred and raw. The leader hesitated, her weapon trembling in her hand. She looked at the human, at the way he stood without fear, at the way her daughter clung to him with love she couldn't deny. Finally, the vixen lowered her weapon. "Leave this land," she said coldly. "Both of you. You are no longer of the clan. If you stay, the next time we meet, there will be no mercy." Sira's breath hitched. "Mother." But the leader turned away, her cloak whipping in the wind. The others followed, fading into the snow until they were gone. Silence fell once more. Sira stood trembling, staring at the empty white field. Then she turned to Elias, tears streaking her fur. "You gave up everything for me," she whispered. He shook his head softly. "No. I just chose what mattered most." She pressed her forehead against his chest, sobbing quietly. He held her, his hand running gently through her fur. For a long time they stayed like that, 2 lost souls clinging to each other in the middle of a cold, endless world. When she finally looked up, the sun was breaking through the clouds. Golden light spilled across the snow, turning it to silver fire. Sierra smiled faintly through her tears. So, where will we go now? Elias looked toward the horizon. Anywhere the sky still touches the ground, he said. Anywhere we can call our own. She nodded, taking his hand. Then we walked together. And so they did. Two shadows against the white. One human, one Vulpine, walking side by side into the light of a new dawn. The world around them was vast and cruel, but it no longer felt lonely, because sometimes shelter wasn't a place. It was a person, and for Elias and Sierra that was forever. End of story.